I never thought my life would be turned upside down by a single phone call. It was a rainy Tuesday afternoon when I received the news that would shatter my perception of family and love. I was sitting at my kitchen table, the smell of freshly brewed coffee mingling with the scent of the rain-soaked earth outside. My father's voice, usually a source of comfort, now felt like a distant echo as I listened to my best friend, Sarah, on the other end of the line. "Lila, you need to sit down. I just heard something about your dad, something big." Her voice trembled, and I could sense the weight of her words before she even spoke them. I felt a chill run down my spine, a premonition of the storm that was about to break. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "What is it, Sarah?" "Your dad, he has another family. In Chicago." The words hung in the air like a thick fog, suffocating and disorienting. I could hardly process what she was saying. My father, the man who had always been my rock, my hero, was living a double life? I felt a wave of betrayal wash over me, crashing against the shores of my heart. How could he do this to us? To my mother? To me? I hung up the phone, my hands trembling. The world around me blurred as I tried to make sense of the chaos swirling in my mind. I thought of my mother, her laughter echoing through our home, her unwavering belief in the sanctity of family. How could she not know? How could he hide something so monumental from us? The questions piled up, each one heavier than the last, and I felt a deep, gnawing pain in my chest. That evening, I confronted my father. He was sitting in his favorite armchair, the one that had molded to his shape over the years, a book resting on his lap. The sight of him, so ordinary and unassuming, made my heart ache. I wanted to believe that the man I loved was still there, but the news had cast a shadow over everything. "Dad, we need to talk," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. He looked up, surprise flickering in his eyes. "What's wrong, Lila?" I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the confrontation. "I know about the other family." His expression shifted, a mixture of shock and guilt washing over his face. "Where did you hear that? Does it matter? It's true, isn't it?" I felt anger bubbling up inside me, a fierce flame igniting in the pit of my stomach. "How could you do this to Mom? To us?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair, a gesture I had seen countless times before. "Lila, it's complicated." "Complicated?" I echoed, my voice rising. "You have another family, Dad. How is that complicated? You've betrayed us." Tears streamed down my face as I struggled to contain the whirlwind of emotions threatening to consume me. I felt anger, sadness, and a deep sense of betrayal all at once. My father's silence was deafening, and I could see the weight of his choices etched into the lines of his face. "I never meant for it to happen," he finally said, his voice heavy with regret. "It was a mistake, a moment of weakness. I love your mother, but things have been difficult for a long time." "Difficult?" I scoffed, my heart racing. "You think that justifies cheating? You think that makes it okay?" He looked away, unable to meet my gaze. "I didn't want to hurt you or your mother. I thought I could keep it separate, that it wouldn't affect our lives." I felt a surge of shame wash over me, a sense of helplessness that left me reeling. I had always seen my father as a pillar of strength, a man who could do no wrong. Now, I was faced with the reality that he was just as flawed as anyone else. The thought was both painful and liberating, a reminder that even the people we love can betray us. As I left the room, I felt a mix of emotions swirling within me: anger, sadness, and a deep sense of uncertainty. I didn't know what to do with this information, how to process the betrayal that had shattered my family. Should I tell my mother? Should I confront my father again? The weight of the decision felt unbearable, and I found myself spiraling into despair. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. I thought of my mother's smile, her unwavering belief in love and family. I thought of the life we had built together, the memories that now felt tainted by my father's betrayal. I felt lost, caught in a web of conflicting emotions. The days that followed were a blur of confusion and heartache. I went through the motions of my daily life, but everything felt different. The laughter of my friends felt hollow, the warmth of the sun outside seemed muted, and even the comforting aroma of my mother's cooking couldn't penetrate the fog of betrayal that enveloped me. I was trapped in a whirlwind of emotions, each one more intense than the last, and I didn't know how to escape. I found myself replaying the conversation with my father over and over in my mind. His words echoed like a haunting melody, a reminder of the fracture that had formed in our family. I wanted to scream, to shake him and demand answers, but I also felt a strange sense of empathy for him. He was my father, after all, a man I had admired my entire life. How could he have fallen so far from the pedestal I had placed him on? One evening, as I sat on the porch watching the sun dip below the horizon, I felt a familiar presence beside me. It was my mother, her gentle smile a balm for my troubled heart. She sat down, her eyes searching mine, and I felt a pang of guilt wash over me. How could I burden her with the truth? How could I shatter her world when she had always been my anchor? "Lila, honey, is everything okay?" she asked, her voice laced with concern. "You've seemed distant lately." I hesitated, the weight of my secret pressing down on me. I wanted to tell her everything, to share the pain that was consuming me, but the thought of breaking her heart was unbearable. Instead, I forced a smile, trying to mask the turmoil within. "I'm just stressed with school, Mom. You know how it is." She nodded, but I could see the worry etched on her face. "If you ever need to talk, I'm here for you. You know that, right?" I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. "I know, Mom. Thank you." As the days turned into weeks, I found myself grappling with the decision of whether to confront my father again or to keep the secret buried deep within me. I felt like a ticking time bomb, the pressure building with each passing moment. I wanted to understand why he had cheated, why he had chosen to betray the family that loved him. But I also feared the consequences of digging deeper into the truth. One night, unable to sleep, I found myself scrolling through social media, searching for any clues about this other family. I stumbled upon a photo of a woman I didn't recognize, her arm wrapped around my father, both of them smiling as if they were the happiest people in the world. The image felt like a dagger to my heart, twisting and turning as I tried to comprehend the reality of my father's betrayal. I felt anger boiling within me, a fierce desire to confront him, to demand answers. The next day, I decided to take matters into my own hands. I called Sarah, my confidant, and poured out my heart to her. "I can't keep the secret anymore, Sarah. I need to know the truth. I need to confront him." "Are you sure that's what you want?" she asked, her voice steady but filled with concern. "What if it only makes things worse?" "I don't care," I replied, my voice firm. "I need to understand why he did this. I can't just pretend everything is fine." That evening, I found myself sitting across from my father once again, the tension in the air palpable. I could feel my heart racing, a mix of fear and determination coursing through my veins. "Dad, we need to talk," I said, my voice steady despite the storm brewing inside me. He looked up, a flicker of apprehension crossing his face. "What is it, Lila?" I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the confrontation. "I saw a photo of you with another woman. I need you to tell me the truth. Why did you cheat on Mom?" His expression shifted, a mixture of guilt and sorrow washing over him. "Lila, Don't try to justify it," I interrupted, my voice rising. "I want to know why. What could possibly make you betray us like this?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair, a gesture I had come to associate with his moments of vulnerability. "It wasn't about you or your mother. It was about me." I felt lost, trapped in a life that had become monotonous. I thought I could find something outside of our family, something that would make me feel alive again. I felt a wave of anger wash over me, a fierce fire igniting within. "So you thought cheating was the answer? You thought lying to us would make you feel better?" "I know it sounds selfish," he said, his voice heavy with regret. "But I couldn't see it at the time. I was blinded by my own desires, my own insecurities. I never wanted to hurt you or your mother. I thought I could keep it separate, that it wouldn't affect our lives." The weight of his words hung in the air, and I felt a mix of anger and sadness wash over me. "But it did affect us, Dad. It's tearing our family apart. How could you think you could just live a double life without consequences? He looked down, shame etched across his features. I was foolish, Lila. I thought I could manage it, that I could compartmentalize my life. But I was wrong. I see that now. I felt a surge of pain at his admission, a deep ache in my chest. And what about Mom? What about the love you promised her? The vows you took? His eyes glistened with unshed tears. I love your mother, Lila. I always have. But I lost sight of that love. I let my own selfishness cloud my judgment. I never meant for it to go this far. I shook my head, my heart heavy with the weight of his betrayal. You don't get to say that, Dad. You made a choice. You chose to hurt us. I know, he said, his voice breaking. And I'm so sorry. I wish I could take it back. I wish I could undo the pain I've caused. The anger that had fueled my confrontation began to dissipate, replaced by a deep sense of sadness. I wanted to hate him, to lash out and make him feel the pain he had inflicted on our family. But as I looked into his eyes, I saw a man who was just as lost as I felt. A man who had made a terrible mistake and was now grappling with the consequences. Do you love her? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He hesitated, and in that moment, I felt my heart shatter a little more. I don't know, Lila. I thought I did, but now I realize it was a distraction. A way to escape the reality of my life. But I love your mother. I always have. The conflicting emotions swirled within me: betrayal, pain, anger, and a flicker of empathy. I wanted to scream, to tell him how much he had hurt us, but I also felt a strange sense of understanding. He was human, flawed and imperfect, just like the rest of us. But that didn't excuse his actions. Do you think Mom deserves to know? I asked, my voice trembling. He looked away, the weight of my question hanging heavily between us. I don't know, Lila. I don't want to hurt her any more than I already have. But she deserves the truth. I felt a wave of uncertainty wash over me. Should I be the one to tell her? Should I bear the burden of this knowledge, knowing it would shatter her world? The thought of seeing her pain was unbearable, yet the thought of keeping this secret felt equally wrong. I can't keep this to myself, I said finally, my voice steady. She deserves to know what you've done. She deserves to make her own choices. My father's face fell, and I could see the fear in his eyes. Lila, please. I don't want to lose her. I don't want to lose you. You've already lost us, Dad, I replied, my heart aching. You just don't realize it yet. As I left the room, I felt a mix of emotions swirling within me: anger, sadness, and a deep sense of uncertainty. I had confronted my father, but the answers I had received only deepened the chasm between us. I felt like I was standing on the edge of a precipice, unsure of whether to leap into the unknown or retreat back to the safety of ignorance. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. I thought of my mother, her unwavering belief in love and family. I thought of the life we had built together, the memories that now felt tainted by my father's betrayal. I felt lost, caught in a web of conflicting emotions, and I didn't know how to escape. The next day, I made the decision to tell my mother. I couldn't keep this secret any longer. It was time for her to know the truth, no matter how painful it would be. I felt a sense of resolve wash over me, a determination to confront the reality of our situation. As I prepared to speak with her, I felt a mix of fear and anticipation. I knew this conversation would change everything, but I also knew it was necessary. My mother deserved to know the truth, even if it meant shattering the fragile facade of our family. When I found her in the kitchen, humming softly, I felt a pang of guilt wash over me. She was so blissfully unaware, her smile lighting up the room as she stirred a pot on the stove. The aroma of her cooking filled the air, a comforting reminder of the home we had built together. But beneath that warmth lay a truth that would change everything. Mom, I said, my voice trembling as I approached her. Can we talk? She turned, her expression shifting from joy to concern. Of course, sweetheart. What's on your mind? I took a deep breath, my heart racing as I prepared to shatter her world. "It's about Dad." Her brow furrowed, and I could see the worry etched on her face. "What about him?" I hesitated, the weight of my words pressing down on me. "I found out that he has another family. In Chicago." The silence that followed was deafening. My mother's eyes widened, disbelief washing over her features. "What are you talking about, Lila? That can't be true." "I wish it weren't," I said, my voice breaking. "But it is." I confronted him, and he admitted it. "He's been living a double life." Tears filled her eyes, and I felt my heart shatter as I watched the realization sink in. No, this can't be happening. He wouldn't do that to us." "I thought the same thing, Mom," I said, my voice trembling. "But he did. He made a choice, and it's tearing our family apart." She sank into a chair, her hands trembling as she covered her face. How could he? How could he betray us like this?" I rushed to her side, wrapping my arms around her as she sobbed. "I'm so sorry, Mom. I didn't want to hurt you, but you deserved to know the truth." As she cried, I felt a mix of emotions swirling within me: anger at my father, sadness for my mother, and a deep sense of helplessness. I wanted to take away her pain, to shield her from the harsh reality of our situation, but I knew that was impossible. The truth was out, and there was no going back. "Why didn't I see it?" she whispered, her voice choked with grief. "I thought we had a good marriage. I thought he loved me." "He does love you, Mom," I said, my heart aching for her. "But he made a terrible mistake. He let his own insecurities and desires cloud his judgment." She looked up at me, her eyes filled with pain and confusion. "What do I do now, Lila? How do I move forward from this?" I felt a wave of uncertainty wash over me. I didn't have the answers, I was just as lost as she was. "I don't know, Mom. But you deserve to make your own choices. You deserve to know what he's done." As the days turned into a blur of emotions, my mother and I navigated the aftermath of the revelation together. She was devastated, her world crumbling around her as she grappled with the betrayal of the man she had loved for so long. I watched as she went through the stages of grief, denial, anger, sadness, each one more painful than the last. My father, on the other hand, was a ghost in our home. He avoided us, unable to face the consequences of his actions. I felt a mix of anger and pity for him, a strange duality that left me feeling conflicted. He had shattered our family, yet I could see the weight of his guilt pressing down on him. One evening, as my mother sat on the couch, staring blankly at the television, I decided to confront my father again. I needed to understand why he had made the choices that had led us to this point. I found him in his study, the dim light casting shadows across his face, making him look older and more worn than I had ever seen him. He was staring at a stack of papers, but I could tell his mind was elsewhere. "Dad," I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside me. "We need to talk." He looked up, surprise flickering in his eyes. "Lila, Don't," I interrupted, my heart racing. "I need to understand why you did this. Why you chose to betray Mom and our family." He sighed, running a hand through his hair, a gesture I had come to associate with his moments of vulnerability. "I wish I could explain it in a way that makes sense. I was lost, Lila. I felt trapped in my own life, and I thought I could find something outside of it that would make me feel alive again." "But you didn't just hurt yourself," I said, my voice rising. "You hurt Mom. You hurt me. You shattered our family." "I know," he said, his voice heavy with regret. "And I'm so sorry. I never wanted to hurt you. I thought I could keep it separate, that it wouldn't affect you or your mother. But I was wrong. Do you even realize the pain you've caused?" I asked, my heart aching. "Mom is devastated. She trusted you, and you threw that trust away." He looked down, shame etched across his features. "I know. I can't express how much I regret my choices. I thought I could manage it, that I could compartmentalize my life. But I was foolish." I felt a surge of anger at his admission, but beneath it lay a flicker of empathy. "You're human, Dad. You made a terrible mistake, but that doesn't mean you get to escape the consequences. You need to face Mom. You need to tell her how you feel. He looked away, the weight of my words hanging heavily between us. I don't want to lose her, Lila. I don't want to lose you. You've already lost us, I replied, my heart aching. You just don't realize it yet. But you have a chance to make things right. You need to be honest with her. As I left the room, I felt a mix of emotions swirling within me: anger, sadness, and a deep sense of uncertainty. I had confronted my father, but the answers I had received only deepened the chasm between us. I felt like I was standing on the edge of a precipice, unsure of whether to leap into the unknown or retreat back to the safety of ignorance. The following days were filled with tension and heartache. My mother was a shell of her former self, her laughter replaced by silence. I tried to be there for her, to support her through the pain, but I felt helpless. I wanted to shield her from the hurt, but I knew that wasn't possible. The truth had been laid bare, and we were left to pick up the pieces. One evening, as we sat together in the living room, I decided it was time for my mother to confront my father. Mom, you need to talk to Dad. You can't keep avoiding him. She looked at me, her eyes filled with pain. What's there to say, Lila? He's broken my heart. I don't know if I can ever forgive him. You don't have to forgive him right away, I said gently. But you deserve to hear his side. You deserve to know why he did this. After a long pause, she nodded, determination flickering in her eyes. You're right. I need to face him. The confrontation was inevitable, and I felt a mix of anxiety and anticipation as we prepared for it. I could sense the tension in the air as my mother and I waited for my father to come home. When he finally walked through the door, the atmosphere shifted, heavy with unspoken words. Can we talk? My mother asked, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. My father nodded, his expression a mixture of fear and regret. They moved to the living room, and I felt like an intruder in my own home. I wanted to give them space, but I also wanted to hear every word. As they sat down, I could see the pain etched on my mother's face, the hurt that had been festering since the revelation. You need to explain yourself, she said, her voice firm but trembling. I deserve to know why you did this. My father took a deep breath, his eyes filled with remorse. I never meant to hurt you, and I'm so sorry for the pain I've caused. I was lost, and I thought I could find something outside of our family that would make me feel alive again.